Hello, my name is April Vollmer, and I'm going to speak today a little bit about my experience with Prince and community on the Lower East Side from 1986 to 2004. In the last Print Room Culture panel, we spoke about the persistence of nonprofit print spaces in New York City, how each of the small organizations that promoted creativity and community through printmaking had managed to reinvent themselves in the face of profound change. Manhattan Graphics moved from Washington Street to Midtown and now to Powerhouse. Bob Blackburn's on 17th Street relocated to the Elizabeth Foundation. The Lower East Side print shop also moved to Midtown in 2005. None of these changes was easy. When I moved to the Lower East Side after Hunter College in 1986, there were few art spaces and many abandoned buildings. There were artists in nearby Soho, but the city of New York was in decline and in the midst of a crack epidemic. I was drawn to the Lower East Side because of its inexpensive housing, multiculturalism, and history of social activism. The lack of financial investment there gave it a sense of possibility. Rents were cheap, artists squatted buildings, and set up sculpture exhibitions in abandoned lots. And this initial image is my friends and neighbors on the Lower East Side in 1999. And it's a little hard to see, but that's Durer's woodcut of Maximilian's parade with all my friends and neighbors there. Very exciting time to be on the Lower East Side. I shared work in public garages, store windows, business offices, nonprofit spaces, and outdoor art fairs. A group we called Artists for All Species organized a series of exhibitions, initially at 10 on 8 Windows on 8th Avenue. It was a garage. It was a unusual space, but it was really great feeling of community, everybody working together. And I brought my own preoccupation with science and nature. My contribution was an installation from earlier etchings of undersea life. That's an etching I made up at Hunter of some sea worms that I cut out and made an installation there with some information about bioconcentration. Hand typed. I can't believe I did it on a typewriter. Let's see. Here's another all species project. A window, plankton, and some more undersea life in a window on Houston Street. This was the first time I made a poster for the exhibitions, and I made it at the Lower East Side print shop. People forget how important that program was. Before the advent of computers, the Lower East Side print shop offered a place for artists to go to make work to promote, well, it promoted political activism, but also just advertising an exhibition. It was, before there were computers, posters were an important way to promote whatever you were working on. And this is the first poster I made there. So during the 80s, I was trying to integrate the prints with the spaces, with nonprofit spaces. This is another example of some prints. These are shinkolei with Japanese paper on black paper. They're etchings, though, from cut plates. And I installed them up at the Bronx River, what was it called? Bronx River Art Center with curator Betty Sue Hertz. Really fun project working with this group, this all species group. But I spent a lot of time in the 1980s at the Henry Street Settlements Abrams Arts Center. It was one of the few arts programs active in the neighborhood when I moved there in 1986. It was a short walk from the Education Alliance, where Chaim Gross taught sculpture until the early 90s. I helped Susan Fleminger organize Out on Their Ears in 1987 and Vital Signs, Artists Respond to the Environment in 1990. She suggested I make posters at the Lower East Side print shop. So again, I had paintings in this show, but I was making posters to promote it. And this was one of my early introductions to the programs of the Lower East Side print shop, which was then on the Lower East Side. Let's see. Oh, one of the other things I wanted to say about this wonderful program, it gave opportunities to many neighborhood artists. And one of the ways I connected with artists was through slide files. And I remember going to Bob Lee's at Asian American Art Center and finding all these slides of interesting artists. Many of them joined me in this exhibition. Ming Fei was one of the important ones. He did the fish murals at the Delancey Street subway stop. I always think of him. Let's see. So in 1995, I became a key holder at the Lower East Side print shop. Here's a slide. It's a scanned from a photo before digital. Me demonstrating Japanese woodcut at the Lower East Side print shop. It was a big deal. I went to a lot of trouble to learn how to do it, and it put me in the position of being a specialist. People were interested to learn more about this process. And that's the old print shop. It was kind of small and dark, but again, a great community resource and very inexpensive to work there. I wanted to speak a little bit about what mokuhanga is. Moku means wood, and hanga means printmaking. It's printed with a handheld baren. It's water-based, using gouache, watercolor, and sumi ink. And it's registered by cutting a little notch in the corner of the block. So it's very flexible. Now the ukiyo-e prints from the 17th and 18th centuries, into the 19th century, were printed by groups of specialists. They weren't created by the artist was just one of a team of people who worked together to create these prints. And in the 20th century, we had shinhanga, which is translated as new prints, and they used a lot of the same techniques and generally a workshop situation where the artist worked with printers and carvers. It's the Sosaku-hanga printmakers in Japan who were most inspirational because they cut and printed their own blocks. Here are some of the special tools we use in Japanese woodcut. See the special way you hold the knife in the fist like that, so you have a lot of strength to carve the thin lines. The white brushes are for water because we print on damp paper. The black brushes are horsehair, designed for spreading the color across the block. And the tools are bonded steel. And what I noticed lately is that whether you're doing oil-based or water-based, everybody tends to use these Japanese tools because they're so good for carving wood. Here's another close-up of the baren. The interior is this coil of twisted fiber, and then it's wrapped with the outside with a piece of bamboo sheath. The coil is made from strips of the same sheath, but it's a little tricky to recover them all the time. Takes some practice, like most things in Japanese woodcut. Here's a couple of slides. Here's me printing, brushing the surface of the block with the stiff horsehair brush. And this is Japanese paper, kind of lightweight, fitted into the kento, set down on the block, protective paper on the back, and the biren is forcing the paper against the ink block.
Can you keep going? I always do a little bit of additional black there, and there, and there.
So that's the gradation that you can do to darken certain areas. And you see I've already got 2 birds on there, both printed from the same block. And speaking of community, one of the ways I shared this special knowledge that I got from, well, Kathy Caraccio gave me my first class, and then I worked with Bill Payden, who encouraged, really insisted that I demonstrate at the Japanese Cherry Blossom Festival at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. I did that for like 10 years, every spring. It was beautiful, but it's a very general audience, and it was outside, so it was really hard to maintain tools and materials. But anyway, it was a community effort to integrate Japanese woodcut with the Japanese community and Japanese culture. In 1997, I organized another exhibition. This was called The Sense of Touch, and it was shown at Ceres Gallery in Soho, and it included 22 artists who used printmaking in creative ways. It was collaged. It was Mimi Scher has an apron there with a photocopy collage. It was a variety of ways of working, all by women artists who used printmaking very freely. And it was called The Sense of Touch because I feel like that's the important thing about printmaking, that you have to touch and deal with materials very directly. A year later, in 1998, I was invited to show at AIR Gallery, and I showed my wood blocks. It was an important moment for me, but it was also important to me to that this was a significant exhibition with printmaking at the center. The prints were not a reproduction of something else. They were artwork in themselves, and they were all cut and printed by me. Another source of support was Kazuko Miyamoto's Gallery 128. She offered opportunities to many artists, but I was especially connected with her because of her knowledge about printmaking. She was a great printmaker and understood what mokuhanga was about. So I often showed work there, and I would often just go and visit her. Here she is fabricating for Saul LeWitt in the back of the gallery. Amazing person. And here's some more slides of my work at the Lower East Side Print Shop. I loved teaching. It's a wonderful way to meet artists and share ideas. And the new space, I guess I mentioned the Lower East Side Print Shop moved to their new space on 36th Street in 2005. They kept the same name, the Lower East Side Print Shop, but they have moved uptown and expanded their programming. While I was involved with them, they did exchange projects and exhibitions. It was a great place to work. I consider that my home base as a printmaker. And I'll be teaching there again. I'll teach a work weekend class this May. Oh, I'm sorry, in June. My talk would not be complete without mentioning this other class that I took. This is an anatomy class with Jenny Capular. Very inspiring to be able to meet with other artists and discuss art and anatomy. Finally, in 2004, I went to Japan and learned a tremendous amount more. I'd been working based on classes I took with Kathy Caraccio and Bill Payton and a few other people I learned from. But going to Japan was a real expansion of my understanding to put Japanese woodcut in the context of Japanese culture. And I also met a whole group of international artists, which broadened my understanding of what printmaking can do in the world. This was a great opportunity for me. It was called the Nagasawa Art Park program at the time, and they expanded and moved. It's now the MILAB program, and it still exists. Now it's in Echizen, and they have 1-month residencies. Wonderful program. That program expanded into conferences, and every 3 years they have a conference. And I always made it my business to plan my trips around that. I was on the board for a while. I'm on the advisory board now. And that was a wonderful opportunity to meet an international group of artists who use mokuhanga, printing themselves primarily. And my last slide, I have to mention my book. I have to say I've been grateful to so many people that I learned from, and I was collecting all this information forever, and I was fortunate enough to sign a contract with Watson Guptill in, I must have signed in 2012. It took several years to write this book, which came out in 2015. And it's really an effort to integrate Japanese techniques with Western printmaking, and it's designed to be useful to Western creative printmakers. And it includes photographs of art from many of the artists that I met through these international programs. And that is the end. I thank you very much.